In the frozen hellscape of Stalingrad, 1942, death stalked the ruins not with the thunder of tanks or the screaming of Stukas, but in perfect, deadly silence. Among the skeletal remains of what was once a proud industrial city, a different kind of warfare emerged. One bullet, one heartbeat, one carefully calculated breath between life and death. Today, we journey into the rubble-strewn streets, where legends were born and myths were forged, to uncover the truth behind what many consider the most famous sniper duel in military history, the hunt between Soviet marksman Vasily Zaitsev and the mysterious German sniper known as Major Erwin König. Before we dive into this incredible story, if you're fascinated by these untold fragments of history like I am, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. We're constantly uncovering the human stories behind history's greatest moments, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. But to understand how this legendary confrontation came to be, we must first travel thousands of miles from the Volga River to the remote wilderness where a young boy first learned that patience could be the difference between life and death. Our story begins far from the battlefields of the Volga, in the remote Ural village of Yeleninka, where young Vasily Zaitsev learned the ancient art of the hunt from his grandfather Andrei. Under the harsh Siberian sky, the old man taught the boy that patience was a weapon, that every shot must count, and that understanding your prey was the difference between survival and starvation. Armed with nothing more and an old Burden rifle, Zaitsev mastered the fundamentals that would later make him legendary: breath control, wind reading, and the ability to remain motionless for hours. These weren't military skills, they were survival instincts, honed in one of the world's most unforgiving environments. By 1937, the young hunter had traded his grandfather's teachings for a naval uniform, stationed in the Pacific port of Vladivostok. But when Hitler's war machine rolled across the Soviet border in June 1941, Zaitsev and thousands of his comrades volunteered for the front lines, eager to defend their homeland. However, it would take more than a year before fate would bring this Siberian hunter to the place where he would make history. That place was about to become the most brutal urban battlefield the world had ever seen: Stalingrad. In 1942, was a city transformed into an apocalyptic wasteland. What had once been a thriving industrial center, stretching 25 kilometers along the Volga's western bank, had become a moonscape of twisted metal, collapsed buildings, and death. The battle centered around three massive factory complexes: the Red October Steelworks, the Barakati Gun Factory, and the Stalingrad Tractor Plant. To the south lay the city's petroleum facilities, while dominating the landscape stood Hill 102 Mamayev, Kurgan, a strategic height that offered commanding views of the entire battlefield. When Zaitsev's 284th Rifle Division crossed the Volga on the night of September 22nd, they entered a meat grinder unlike anything the world had seen. Building to building, room to room combat reduced entire battalions to handfuls of survivors within days. It was during one of these desperate actions that fate intervened. Pinned down by a German machine gun position on Mamayev, Kurgan Zaitsev dropped his submachine gun and picked up a Mosin Nagant rifle. The target was hundreds of meters away, a nearly impossible shot with iron sights. But the boy who had learned to hunt in the Urals was no ordinary soldier. 3 shots, 3 dead Germans. One legendary sniper was born. But this moment of marksmanship was just the beginning. What happened next would transform a simple sailor into one of the most feared names whispered in German trenches across the Eastern Front. Colonel Nikolai Batuk, nicknamed Bulletproof for his fearless frontline leadership, witnessed Zaitsev's marksmanship that day. He immediately recognized the potential and ordered the young sailor to be trained as a sniper, but formal sniper training was nearly non-existent. Instead, Zaitsev learned from Alexander Kalantiv, a soldier who had started what became known as the Sniper Movement, a grassroots campaign of amateur marksmen hunting Germans throughout the ruins. I followed Sasha around for 3 days. Zaitsev later recalled, "That was my entire sniper education. When they later asked me to train others, I was teaching and learning at the same time. The Soviet propaganda machine quickly seized on these urban hunters. Writer Ilya Ehrenberg's inflammatory articles appeared in army newspapers. Kill the German. This is what your motherland demands. If you haven't killed at least one German today, your day has been wasted. While propaganda raged in newspapers, something much more significant was about to happen to Zaitsev personally, an event that would give him the tools he needed to become truly legendary. On October 16, 1942, General Vasily Chukov personally decorated Zaitsev with the Medal for Valor, but more importantly, he presented the sniper with a weapon that would become legendary, a Mosin Nagant Model 1930. Equipped with a pen scope offering 4x magnification, this rifle was capable of accurate shots at 800 meters, with near-perfect precision at 400 meters. Interestingly, many German snipers, including top ace Joseph Sepp Allerberger, actually preferred captured Soviet rifles to their own Mauser 98KS. It was during this ceremony that Zaitsev uttered the words that would become the 62nd Army's motto. When Chukov expressed his fears about the Army's desperate situation, Zaitsev replied, "Comrade General, for us there is no land beyond the Volga." With proper equipment and growing fame, Zaitsev was now ready for his next challenge, passing on his deadly knowledge to others who could multiply his impact across the battlefield. Now armed with proper equipment, Zaitsev was ordered to establish a sniper school. His students became known as the Hares, a play on his surname, which means hare in Russian. Zaitsev taught them the psychology of sniping. Target selection was crucial. An officer was worth more than a private. An artillery observer could save hundreds of lives with a single bullet. Even among common soldiers, he instructed, shoot the one with the medals killing the bravest will break the courage of the entire unit. One of his first students was Mikhail Yubazenko, a wounded soldier who refused evacuation. During their first lesson, Zaitsev demonstrated tactical patience. Think of it like billiards. He told Yubazenko, as they watched a German digging, every shot sets up the next. Wait for him to turn toward open ground when he falls. His comrade might try to retrieve the shovel. The lesson worked perfectly. One German fell in the open, and when his companion reached for the dropped tool bag, 2 kills with careful planning. But as Zaitsev's reputation grew and his students spread death throughout the German lines, something ominous was stirring in the enemy high command. The Germans were about to respond to the sniper threat in the most direct way possible. By late October 1942, German high command had grown alarmed at the devastation caused by Soviet snipers, particularly Zaitsev, whose daily kill count averaged 4 to 5 Germans. According to a captured prisoner, they had allegedly sent a specialist to deal with the problem. Major Erwin König, supposedly head of the Berlin sniper school, Colonel Batyuk delivered the news to Zaitsev with apparent confidence. "This major will be child's play for our boys, eh?" Zaitsev replied with bravado, but privately he was concerned. He had seen too many skilled snipers killed to underestimate any opponent. The confrontation that would define both men's legacies was about to begin, and it would start as many deadly encounters do, with what seemed like a routine morning mission. The confrontation likely began on November 1st, 1942, near a small spring on Mamayev Kurgan, where German soldiers collected water each morning. 2 of Zaitsev's students, Morozov and Shakin, answered the routine call of Fritzes at the spring. They never made it back. One was wounded. The other had his scope shattered by a perfectly placed bullet. The message was clear. A master marksman had arrived. On November 2nd, Zaitsev selected his best student, Sergeant Nikolai Kulikov, to assist in hunting this phantom sniper. For 3 days, they played a deadly game of cat and mouse. The first day brought only frustration. A helmet moved along the German trench, too obviously, too deliberately. It was bait, carried by an assistant, while the real sniper waited for muzzle flash to reveal their position. The second day passed in methodical observation. Every crater, every pile of rubble, every piece of debris was catalogued and studied, but their quarry remained invisible. On the third day, the hunt was about to take a dramatic turn that would give Zaitsev the clue he desperately needed. On the third day, Battalion Commissar Danilov joined the hunt. Spotting something in no man's land, he pointed excitedly and immediately took a bullet for his trouble. Only a master sniper could have made that shot, Zaitsev realized. That speed, that precision, it had to be him. But where? Zaitsev had memorized every detail of the German positions. Then, studying the terrain once more, his eye fell on an unremarkable pile of bricks and a sheet of metal between a knocked-out tank and a sealed pillbox, too low for concealment, unless someone had dug underneath it. That's where he is, Zaitsev whispered to Kulikov. I would do the same thing. Using a decoy helmet, Zaitsev confirmed his suspicions. The bullet's angle proved the sniper's position. Now came the hardest part, patience. On the morning of November 5th, likely the final day of clear weather that year's, Zaitsev and Kulikov took their positions for the last time. After midday, we were in shade while his position was directly illuminated, Zaitsev later recalled. That's when I saw it a glimmer at the edge of that metal sheet. Kulikov, with the skill of a master actor, slowly raised his helmet in a perfectly natural motion. The German sniper, believing he had finally eliminated the famous Russian rabbit, raised his head for just a moment to confirm the kill dot. It was enough. Dot bang dot, the legendary duel was over. But as with many wartime stories, the line between fact and legend would prove to be much more complex than anyone realized at the time. That night, as fighting raged across the line, Zaitsev and Kulikov crawled to the German position. They found a body, documents, and a sniper rifle. Colonel Batyuk confirmed the identity as Major König. But here's where history becomes murky. No Major Erwin König existed in Wehrmacht records. The timeline makes it impossible for such a specialist to have traveled from Berlin to Stalingrad in the brief window when Zaitsev became famous. Modern historians suggest the opponent was likely Jeff Reiter Hermann Stoff, an ace sniper from the 295th Infantry Division with 103 confirmed kills. His unit fought at Mamayev Kurgan at the correct time, and records show he died in November 1942. Whether König or Stoff, one fact remains: somewhere in those ruins, a skilled German marksman tried to hunt the hunter and lost. The duel was over, but Zaitsev's war was far from finished. What happened to him afterward would complete one of the most remarkable military careers of the entire conflict. Zaitsev continued fighting until January 1943, when shrapnel nearly cost him his eyesight. He recovered to finish the war with 235 confirmed kills, including 11 enemy snipers, earning the Hero of the Soviet Union award. But the impact of the sniper war extended far beyond one man. From August 1942 to February 1943, Soviet records claim 985 snipers killed 30,000 German soldiers at Stalingrad, numbers that, even if inflated, represent a significant tactical innovation. So what can we make of this legendary story? What separates the historical facts from the wartime propaganda and the myths that have grown over the decades? Today, the battlefield where this legendary duel occurred is a quiet residential area, transformed beyond recognition. The spring where German soldiers once collected water is gone. The ruins have been cleared, and the metal sheet that may have concealed a master sniper exists only in memory. But the legend endures, raising questions that historians still debate. Who was the mysterious German sniper? Did the duel happen as described? Or has time and propaganda embellished the truth? Perhaps it doesn't matter. In the hellscape of Stalingrad, where survival often depended on a single bullet's accuracy, legends were born from the intersection of skill, courage, and desperate circumstances. The story of Vasily Zaitsev, whether fighting König, Stoff, or an unnamed phantom, represents the human element in industrial warfare's most brutal chapter. In the end, what matters is not just who lived or died, but how ordinary people, armed with extraordinary skill and unbreakable will, helped determine the fate of nations in history's greatest conflict. A hunter from the Urals had become the ghost of Stalingrad, and his legend lives on.